Hello, and welcome to today's virtual seminar, Motivating and Maintaining During the Great Resignation, which is being brought to you by the Practice Management Resource Center at the State Bar of Michigan. I'm Joanne Hathaway and your host for today. All attendees are in listen-only mode without video activation. As always, we do encourage your questions, so please type them into the Q&A pod. Today's guest is Andrew Elowit, a lawyer, practice management advisor, professional certified coach, ABA author, and more. And now I'll turn the mic over to Andrew so he can share further information about himself and begin today's presentation. Andrew, over to you.
Thank you very much, Joanne. I'm going to go to sharing my screen. Bear with me for a second. Some of my technology, I know this comes as a shock to people, doesn't want to work really well. Okay. We are making changes. You will find that I am a lawyer, a practice management consultant, and not somebody who is a technologist. Oh, hold on, people. Oh dear. Sorry for the dead space, people. Oh. Okay. Let's see if we can share the screen now. Good. Even better. And we're almost there. If you're wondering what's happening, my mouse is not responding. So I will coax it ever so gently to start. And once we get going, it should be fine. Okay. Hopefully you can see that. Joanne, can you give me a thumbs up or let me know that you can see the beginning of the screen?
Andrew, it looks great.
Okay.
We're all ready for you to continue. Thank you.
Thank you for your patience. So as I said, I'm not a technologist. I started my legal career as a transactional lawyer in a small firm that became part of a very large firm. And then I went in-house and became a general counsel and all. I practiced law for over 22 years. I then changed professions. I became an executive coach and a consultant, specializing in leadership, talent, and career development for lawyers and legal executives in private practice and firms, corporate legal departments, and government agencies. My firm, New Actions, which you'll see the logo repeatedly throughout this, focuses on the people side of law practice management. It's how lawyers lead, manage, thrive, change, and find resilience and balance in their lives. In addition to all that, I'm a fellow in the College of Law Practice Management, an International Coach Federation, professional certified coach, and the author of several books and articles, including Lawyers as Managers, How to Be a Champion for Your Firm. A lot of the material today comes from that book, which I co-wrote with Marshall Wasserman, and we have a great discount available on that book, 30% off. That'll be one of the last slides that you see. I've also written the Lawyer's Guide to Professional Coaching, and one of my articles on is managing lawyers like leading cats actually won an award. I didn't know that the awards were given for stuff like that. So for this presentation, I'm going to break my typical custom of having little text on my PowerPoint slides. I thought because of this topic, the number of specific takeaways that I'm going to include, I'm going to go with bullet points. And if you don't like bullet points, my apologies. It'll give you a chance to relax during this presentation, you can listen more carefully, come up with good questions, and not be overly concerned with taking notes. I will be sending out PDFs of my slides afterwards. I think you'll receive an email from the State Bar of Michigan tomorrow, letting you know how to do that. And I'm going to take a couple of breaks for questions during the course of this presentation. If you do have a question, please put it in the Q&A box, not the chat box. It's much easier for us to find and respond to if it's in the Q&A box. So with all that, let's get going. So is there really a great resignation? You know, this first came into focus when Microsoft did a report of over 30,000 people, and they found a tremendous amount, 41% of the global workforce, likely to consider leaving their current employer. Now, this is not just law. 46%, and even higher percentage, planning to make a major career transition. Further to that, employees between ages 30 and 45, prime years for practicing law, saw the largest jump in resignation rates, with an average increase of more than 20% between 2020 and 21. Let me underline those years. It's the first year into the second year of the pandemic. And more information, the Wall Street Journal and the US Department of Labor. I'm not going to read everything on the slides, obviously. As I was preparing this, every day, more information was coming in. So yes, there really is a great resignation. There is a tremendous amount of movement, people leaving their companies, leaving their firms, going to new ones, leaving professions and businesses altogether. A lot of them are starting their own businesses and firms. So is this true in the legal profession? Yeah, there are not as many surveys. But anecdotally, I can tell you, colleagues I talk to, managing partners I talk to, legal recruiters, law firm placement people, all have the same story. There's a tremendous amount of movement now, and it is, for the time being at least, a lawyer's market, not a firm's market in terms of the power dynamic and finding a new place. From legal jobs, we have been in March 2020. Keep in mind, this was early in the pandemic. Turnover rate within legal departments and firms, all-time high, 9.7%. And you have the executive director of NALP adding in that lateral recruiting, partners and associate hiring way up. So it is happening in the legal profession as well. It's inescapable. So why is this happening now? It's really the confluence of a number of different factors. When the pandemic began, first year and a half, we were all, kind of going, how is this going to pan out? How long is it going to last? How severe is it going to be? How is it going to impact me, my firm, my clients? There were so many questions that we didn't have answers for. We still have a lot of the same questions, but we know a lot more now. And people were hesitant to leave their jobs. They were all kind of frozen, metaphorically waiting for the second shoe to drop. Part of this was, as the pandemic rolled on, people started to question, what do they really want from their lives, their career, their firm? There was a lot of self-reflection, at least time for self-reflection away from the office. And a lot of people decided they wanted to make changes. One thing that was very prominent was employees, especially millennials, wanted better alignment between work and their lifestyle and their values. They didn't feel that there was fit. So one thing we saw is the term work-life integration and alignment that started to take over work-life balance. It's a subtle distinction, but they're not separate. They need to be integrated. Last, a lot of boomers who were still in the job market in law decided, you know what, this is a good time to leave. And so they left. All this creating more demand for jobs. So why have we found that employees are leaving their law firms? Okay, it's the typical reasons: unhappiness and dissatisfaction with their current manager and the work they're doing. This isn't just law. If you look at employee satisfaction surveys, number one thing is my relationship with my manager. I mention this because it underlines the importance of being a good people manager if you're running a firm, if you own a firm. Second thing, and these are in no particular order, people felt stuck. They didn't see an opportunity for progress development in their career. They also felt underappreciated, underpaid. Lots of people didn't feel they belonged at their firm. There might not have been a fit for values, or they may have felt like the odd person out in their firm. There weren't faces that looked like them at the firm. Another thing happened with work from home and virtual work. All of a sudden, people in firms and in businesses discovered, oh my God, I can relocate. I can work from a new part of the country. It might be moving to be with my parents, or my spouse may have a job, or maybe it's just our vacation home in the mountains. I can work from there. So there was a lot of movement in that regard as well. And for some people, the grass is always greener. I've coached a number of attorneys where they've been in 3 firms in a relatively short period of time. They're always looking for the next best thing, and they're not recognizing that sometimes the common factor, the common reason why they didn't fit at any of their firms, maybe them rather than the firms they've chosen. So why should we care about this? Well, if you have a law firm, you know turnover is very expensive. The first, I think it was 2001, when UC Hastings School of Law produced the first study on this, and they put the cost of replacing a mid-level associate at somewhere between $250,000 and $400,000. That has only gone up. You'll see, if you read the slide, that the numbers vary. Cumulatively, the legal industry, the cost to it was $9.1 billion. That's just the 400 largest firms in the US. They peg it at $400,000 to $800,000 for the cost of replacing an experienced lawyer. I think the 33% figure deals more with legal professionals and staff. It's high, it's costly, and there's several factors that contribute to this. There's recruiting, onboarding, lost productivity, training, and just the errors and things falling between the gaps when you have changes of personnel. If you've been one of those people who's been running a firm or stayed at a firm, you've had a firsthand window onto how this can be disruptive and expensive. So the question is, the big question for all of us is, what's a managing partner to do? And I hope to answer that question to give you takeaways as to how you can motivate your people, how you can keep their morale up, how you can keep your turnover down, your retention up, and how you can even attract new people to your firm, because there's more competition for lawyers and legal professionals and staff. It's very, very important. So how do we go about doing this? My co-author, Marcia Wasserman, preaches this to all her clients. If you want people to stay at your firm, hire the right people. We both love this quote from Jim Collins, From Good to Great. If you get the right people on the bus, the right people in the right seats, and the wrong people off the bus, that wrong people off the bus doesn't usually get included, but I think it's important. Then we'll figure out how to take it someplace great. You need to spend time focusing on hiring. And there's a common mistake I think that's made. There's too much emphasis on a person's legal skills, their experience, and not enough on another factor, which is cultural fit. You need to stop and think, how's this person going to work in terms of the dynamics of the firm or practice area, their chemistry with other people? How does their work style mesh with other people who are already at the firm? And when you're hiring for skills and cultural fit, first of all, ask yourself, who should you include, involve in the hiring process? Often people, it's just top-down hiring. It may be one partner and an HR person. you want to get a broader take on the person, more interaction. This is good for your people who are at the firm. They feel they are part of the process. They are going to be much more likely to welcome and on board that person who is a new hire. You're also going to get a mix of perspectives, which may be very helpful. We all have blind spots. We're all human. So it's good to have more interactions with a potential hire. You also want to use questions, skills testing that indicates if the candidate will fit into your firm's culture. One big way to do this, use probing open-ended questions, not specific closed-ended questions, but ones that are going to give you a feel for who the person is as a person. I mean, you may be very clear about their experience, their legal skills, what they can do, but you want to know who they are and how they go about their life in a firm. There are even structured behavioral questions that you can use. We go into that in the book. A simple way of thinking about this is look at the successful members of your firm. And I mean successful in terms not just they're productive, but also they get on well. They aren't a drag on the rest of the firm. Qualities like their resiliency, their attitude, teamwork, work ethic, identify those competencies and then see if you can come up with questions that are going to help you understand whether a new hire will fit well in that regard. Okay, so you've hired people. You must pay attention to onboarding. Now, it's extraordinarily important to onboard, and it's at the same time in a virtual or hybrid environment, a whole lot harder to do. No way around that. Just part of what's difficult in the last 2 years. But there are ways to do it. It does require extra effort. You want to make your new people feel welcome, part of the firm during orientation. And what does orientation look like? It varies from firm to firm. It can be a formal program. It can be a series of Zoom meetings with people or Teams meetings with people. It can, if you're in a part of the country where it's okay, it can be face-to-face over a meal. Depends on what works for you. What you don't want to do is give them a copy of the employee manual and say, here you go. Read this. You're going to be reporting to Jane and Joe, and they will be assigning you work. And you've isolated them in that way. They need to know more people in the firm at all levels. So a couple of things you can do. You can give them a mentor. Somebody in the firm doesn't necessarily have to be Jane or Joe, one of their supervising partners. Somebody who's going to help them in their development and, at least for the beginning, help them get oriented. This doesn't have to be somebody at a higher level. It can be a peer buddy, somebody at their same level who really understands how things are done. Above all, you want to check in frequently and listen to what they have to say. What challenges are you running into? What don't you know that you'd like to know? What would be helpful for you? That kind of dialogue is very important, especially during the first 6 months. That's kind of the make or break time in terms of developing a person's loyalty and connection to a firm. There are also other things you can do. Again, one of the challenges of the virtual environment is training. There are e-learning opportunities, just-in-time training. There are companies that provide that for law firms online. You can do differing degrees of customization for your particular needs. So please don't feel like you're totally stuck in that regard. So I'm going to take a break now for questions. Joanne, do we have any questions at this point? It also gives me a break to have a little bit of tea.
Andrew, we do not have any questions in the queue at this time. So again, we do encourage everyone's questions. We love to have a back and forth dialogue, and we will continue to reach out to you in this regard. So Andrew,
let's cut rolling again.
There you go.
Sounds good. Okay. So what are your levers? What are your keys to keeping people at your firm? What you must do is get to know them personally. And I don't mean being best friends or, you understand the names of their children and their dogs. That's great. Or cats. Don't want to be dog centric here. But you want to know what motivates them. So let me do a little quick chapter and verse on motivators, intrinsic and extrinsic, and what the difference is. So here you have that, by the way, that is going to be the extent of my really great graphics. I hope you like the animation. It only took me probably an hour to figure that out. So extrinsic motivators, here are some examples. The most common one, money. Yeah, you want to motivate somebody? Give them more money. Or position. It can be being elevated to a higher level in the firm. Perks are certainly nice. Praise works for everybody. Punishment is a motivator, a negative motivator. Motivators can be positive or negative. And fame, giving people notoriety, mentioned in firm newsletters or in community newsletters, industry newsletters, all sorts of stuff. Now, these are extrinsic in terms of it's stuff outside the person that is affecting them and hopefully motivating them to do a better job, to stay at the firm, etc. Now, by contrast, there are intrinsic motivators. Here are some of them. Curiosity, autonomy, mastery, enjoyment, purpose. These are intrinsic in the sense that it is the work itself that will motivate people. So if they are doing work or doing work in a way that, for example, makes them feel like they have mastered a practice area or a certain aspect of the law or a certain kind of appearance in the court or a certain level in the courts, yeah, they will develop a sense of mastery. That will be motivating. Autonomy is a quality that is higher in lawyers as a personality trait than the general population. Lawyers like to figure out their own solutions to problems rather than being directed all the time. If you've ever been micromanaged by somebody and you're a lawyer, well, that ran smack into your desired sense of autonomy. Okay, curiosity and enjoyment, I think, are fairly straightforward. Purpose has become increasingly important. People want to feel that their work is meaningful. It's contributing to either the good of the firm, the good of the client, or the larger social good. This is especially prevalent in millennials, younger lawyers. Purpose is important. So if you can connect the dots between what somebody is doing and the larger impact it has, positive impact, you are using purpose as a motivator. Now, why is this important? Lawyers are considered knowledge workers, just like software engineers, for example. They use their brains. For knowledge workers more than other people, intrinsic motivators work really, really well. That is what gets people to do a good job, a faster job, to be more productive, to innovate within their organizations. Now, not all jobs we do as lawyers really are knowledge work. There are some mundane jobs that we need to do, and extrinsic motivators work well for that. For example, let's say I wasn't a litigator, transactional attorney, but I understand from litigator friends of mine and clients of mine, there's some aspects in discovery and in depositions that can be kind of burdensome, especially when there are a lot of them. Maybe you reward somebody with money as well as recognition for the work they've done. In my opinion, a combination of extrinsic and intrinsic motivators is what's going to work. And you need to keep in mind a few things. Well, first of all, everybody isn't the same. What works for one person may not work for another, or for the same person at different times in their career. Let's start with compensation. As I said, this is the most common motivator. It's extrinsic, it's common, and there can be a trap in it. What we're seeing a lot of now is kind of a bidding war for some laterals, some associates. People are paying more and more and more for lawyers. Well, what happens when you do this? First of all, prices go up, the cost to your firm goes up, and that becomes a cost that's ongoing. Means something either has to go or the firm needs to make more money to do this. So I don't think over the long run, it's really sustainable. What you can do is make sure you understand in your market what are competitive salaries, both for attorneys and legal staff, and stay competitive. You're going to be reducing the difference between what somebody else may be willing to pay and what you can afford to pay. So competitive salaries, yes, definitely. But there's still a problem. You got to be aware of something called hedonic adaptation. The idea of this is people get acclimated to something, and once they get acclimated to it, they expect it. And if they don't get it, they're unhappy. So what we've seen a little of is people saying, you know, we're going to give you a huge signing bonus, for example. People like that. Who's going to turn down, you know, an additional 50,000 or more to join a firm? But then when they don't get the 50,000 the next year or the year following, they're unhappy. They begin to expect that. So you need to be kind of cognizant of that. Where can I run into problems if I am just using money? Now, salaries can have that built in, but you can bonus people or reward them. What I tell clients is, okay, what message are you trying to send? And it's interesting, managing partners may be confused about this. I think it's best to tie bonuses or rewards to recognition and appreciation for extra efforts and accomplishments. If you start giving people bonuses just for normal stuff, they take it for granted. They don't connect the dots. But if you can say, I appreciate that working on this case, there were 5-6 weekends in a row that you were working on this, or maybe in the office, if we can go back to when that happened. People will appreciate the reward, the bonus that much more, nor will they expect it if they're not working in the office 6 weekends in a row. Tying the bonuses and the rewards to these actual events is one approach. And there's a lot of questioning about whether smaller, more frequent rewards work better than larger annual rewards. It's often that we see, you know, at the end of the year, financials are done for a firm, they see what the pot of money is left over for bonuses, and then they divvy it up. In addition to that, they do their annual reviews. Well, you know, let's stop right there. Annual reviews, they're necessary, but annual, they should really be more frequent. People need more frequent feedback about how they're doing. And if that's the case, maybe smaller and more frequent rewards along with those reviews would be helpful. From a cash flow standpoint, it can be difficult, but in terms of motivating people, I think it's a good idea. I already touched on signing bonuses. Kind of, you know, next to that, I've seen associates leaving one firm because they're being made a partner at another firm. My advice to them, after hearing a couple of horror stories, is be very, very clear about what a partnership means. You can be a partner and still be at a career dead end, and you don't want that. So this graphic may look out of context. I have it because there's a quote that I really love from Dan Hatch, a legal recruiter. Money is a good deodorant for other problems. Okay. Some firms throw money at people to get them to join the firm. And they have to, because they have a dysfunctional culture. They're really struggling and they badly need bodies. It can be a cover-up for underlying problems. So just realize there are limitations to compensation as a way to get your people, and don't fall into the traps. So with what I've been saying, it sounds like, firms that have the deepest pockets, they're the ones that have a competitive advantage. Okay, what can you do? Well, let's go back to our intrinsic motivators, because they're the differentiator. This is a way, without necessarily spending a lot of money in terms of salaries and comp, you can make a difference. This is the standard list. This is the thinking. But as I was putting together this presentation, I thought there's something else that's missing. It's belonging, a sense of belonging to a firm. We'll touch on that as we go on. So the main thing people are looking for right now, flexible working arrangements. There's no one, simple mix that works for all firms, all employees. I think it's important to have a core structure. Okay, when are people going to be reachable? What are their working hours generally? When can clients get a hold of them? When can you get a hold of your employees? Have that core and then work off of that. Then you can craft your individual arrangements and your accommodations for them. People are different. Let's say you have one employee, both spouses work and they have 3 kids. Their needs may be different from somebody who doesn't have kids or doesn't have a partner. So recognize that equitable treatment doesn't mean identical treatment. There is room in which to do that. And if you do have people working remotely, provide support for that. Support needed in terms of technology, as well as realizing it can be even more stressful doing legal work when you're working at home. At first we thought, oh, this is great. This is lovely. I can work at home. I think all of us found that there were new and at times very difficult stressors that we had to contend with. Another thing that people are looking for, development opportunities. This is an investment in your people. It lets them know that you believe in them and their future at your firm. So a couple of things to do. One, just funding their development, finding programs for them. And then once they have developed the skills, give them work that'll help them stretch and acquire new skills, practice those skills, new knowledge. Sometimes we hear pushback. Well, if I spend money on them, all they're going to do, they're going to be that much more qualified. They're going to leave the firm. They're going to, get more money elsewhere. Okay, that may happen. But if you're training your people and they can do more, they should be more valuable to your firm and consequently more valuable to retain. If you have a good firm culture and they appreciate the training and development, and the money you've spent on that for them, more likely to stay. Being clear and supportive is an aspect of firm culture. When it comes to being supportive, having an understanding of what an employee's career path is very, very important. I hear this a lot. I don't know what I need to do to get to become a partner, to become counsel, to get to the next level. You need to be transparent about that and help your employees set clear goals for their professional development, personal development as well. And then give them feedback along the way. As I said before, frequent feedback is necessary. You want to mentor and coach your employees. My apologies for the typo there. There's always one. Mentoring and coaching is really important. It's hard to do professional or personal development on your own. Having coached for over 20 years, I think it's darn near impossible for people to do this, at least significant development. So provide mentors and coaches. It can be informal, it can be formal, it can be somebody within your firm, outside your firm, but help your employees develop. They will appreciate your investment in them. Now, this may sound out of place. Invest in technology. What's technology doing here? Okay, let's go rewind the tape to the first 3-4 months of the pandemic. People started working at home. Wow, a lot of firms had technology that just did not work well with people not in the office. It created headaches, it slowed things down, people were unhappy. That doesn't need to be the case anymore. There's a lot of technology that facilitates remote work. It's available. Investigate, find out what works for you. Ask your employees who are working virtually what will be helpful for them to get their job done. Also, sometimes employees lack the hardware and tools they need to just be more efficient. An example of this. Have you ever tried to read an Excel spreadsheet on a laptop screen? Or do intensive work on documents on just a laptop screen? One client firm of mine bought monitors for their people working remotely. Monitors could connect to the laptops, and everybody was so thankful and a lot more productive. Fewer mistakes were made. You can also automate certain mundane legal tasks. Like I said, knowledge workers want to be stimulated. Mundane stuff, not really the thing that's going to turn them on. So if there are things that can be automated, good, do it. Keep in mind too, younger attorneys are generally more tech savvy and they have higher expectations that you're going to be up to speed technologically. And I don't know that a person would leave a firm, but they might not join your firm if they think the firm, consists of dinosaurs and Luddites. So don't forget about technology. Huge thing is to foster a sense of belonging. What we've been talking about is loyalty to a firm, that stickiness in a good way, that's going to keep people at a firm. If you don't feel you belong in a firm, why are you going to stay? Key thing is to get to know the people in your firm, develop good working relationships with them. You don't have to be besties or anything, but good working relationships. You understand their motivators, who they are. Help them understand how the work they individually do contributes to the whole, to the firm's well-being, their clients' well-being. This is connecting the dots for them so they feel they are making a contribution. Another thing you can do is before you make decisions, get firm members' input. Chances are a lot of the decisions you make are going to impact them a great deal. So get their input. Getting input doesn't mean you have to accept all their recommendations and suggestions. No, but they do need to feel heard and like they are part of the decision, at least in terms of gathering information. As I said before, develop those relationships and bonds. What we find at some firms, this is sad, is that DEI efforts are cosmetic more than anything else. And at the same time, there are people that don't feel fully comfortable in their firms. Do pay attention to this. Some firms get a reputation for not being very DEI friendly, and that hampers their recruiting and their retention. Fostering a sense of belonging is extraordinarily important, but it is tough in the virtual environment. This isn't rocket surgery or anything. If you have people not in the same physical space, not sitting down together, not seeing each other, 3 or even 6 feet apart on a day-to-day basis, passing in the halls, it's harder to create that sense of belonging, which means you just have to work harder now and hope that it's going to be easier. I think it will be when we get back into offices. Another factor, again, part of culture, show appreciation to people. You need to communicate and delegate and give feedback in a respectful and appreciative manner. Now, the golden rule you're familiar with. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Well, I'm a big fan of the platinum rule. A lot of people are. It's not that you want people to do unto, you're going to treat them the way you want to be treated. Realize they're different. They may not need or want to be treated the same way. An example of this, you may be working for somebody, could be a client, and you feel obligated to give them very detailed explanations and analysis. You think you are doing a good thing for them because you are being so thorough, so complete. What if that person isn't like you? What if they just like the headlines? They want 3 bullet points. Well, we have 3 bullet points here, and that's all. And when you start to go into long explanations, you lose them. Okay. All kinds of permutations, variations on this. Realize people are different and treat them as you think will work best for them, not just for you. And then the last thing, overlooked all too often with the stress that we have practicing law, the time pressures and all that, saying please, thank you, and I'm sorry, go a tremendous distance in building those bonds. And if problems occur, and they will, because we're all human, a good apology goes a tremendous amount of the way to healing rifts. One thing that we've found, when people leave firms, all of a sudden the people remaining are called upon to pick up a lot of slack. And yes, in a perfect world, we would bring somebody in a moment and they could pick it up and they would know exactly what to do. And the pressure and the load on the people remaining wouldn't be onerous. Not the case in this world. What we've seen happen earlier in the pandemic, I think, was that the people remaining at a firm started to edge ever closer to burnout. And when people burn out, they're less productive, less effective, they make mistakes. They may leave the firm as well as they get burnt out, and that can be just as costly. It can compound the problems that you have. To the extent you can, anticipate these problems, avoid unmanageable workloads. It may be bringing in temporary people on staff or contract lawyers. Be proactive in that. And yes, nobody wants to push back on a client and say, no, we can't do it that quickly, but there are times to protect your people in the long term to prevent burnout. It's necessary to push back and manage client expectations. Being skillful about that, it's an art. And I work with a lot of attorneys on that. And they find it's effective. Their expectations of what a client are going to say are often far worse than what the clients say. And clients are generally understanding because they have faced the same problems in their organization. Championing wellness and work-life balance, it's more than just terms. Again, millennials, younger attorneys are much more attuned to this, and they're looking for far more alignment in a firm, and not just what's said, but how a firm acts and responds. My first rule, make mental health a discussable topic. It's not a taboo. It used to be when I started practicing many moons ago, we just didn't talk about it. If you can think back a couple of years to the ABA, Betty Ford Hazelton white paper on substance abuse and mental health in the legal profession, you know how bad the problem is in our profession. Incidents of both mental health issues and substance abuse are extraordinarily high. So become cognizant of that, make it discussable in your firm. Offer support to your people. Lets them know that they're important and what they do matters as well. Starting to recognize, respond to burnout and substance abuse, a good idea. There are programs, every bar association now has programs on this. And if there are resources and programs available for your employees, might be through your health provider, might be through the bar, let your employees know about that. And if you don't have programs, invest in them. they're a great idea. Lastly, when people come back into the offices, and let's hope that's soon, more and more, make sure you create a safe, secure, and healthy environment for your employees once they're there. They will appreciate it. Okay. I'm going to take a break now. Joanne, do we have any questions? We're down to our last 15 minutes or so.
Andrew, we do not have any questions in the Q&A pod. Sounds like you're hitting on all fours here. So,
Okay.
yes, that we will.
Going. And I have a
Yes,
few, I'll elaborate on a few things if we don't have any more questions at the end. So I've mentioned firm culture a few times now. And a lot of attorneys don't have a good grasp of this. And it makes sense. It's, it's kind of a vague, ephemeral concept. I like to liken it to the wind. Do we actually see the wind? No. But we do see the impact the wind has. It might be leaves blowing, waves being whipped on Lake Michigan. So we look at the effect of culture, and culture has a tremendous effect on law firms and in turn on retention and satisfaction and engagement. So what's firm culture? It's how things get done at a firm. It's, if we think about it, it's the walk of a firm, not its talk. There's a lot about this is our firm culture. Firms sometimes invest in mission statements, vision statements, value clarification. All that's great. Big if, it actually matters. And sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes what's produced is something that sounds good. It's a wonderful part of a firm's web page. It may be on a plaque in the waiting area or the conference room, but it's not really what's happening. Culture is really shared behaviors, values, and beliefs. It's what's encouraged, what's tolerated. You look at how decisions are made. One of the biggest indicators of culture is a firm's compensation policies, also their DEI policies. You look at what kind of behavior is tolerated in partners. If a partner is abusive, but they're a big rainmaker, well, in spite of what they may say, a firm may say about an inclusive environment, if that's something that's tolerated, well, okay, that's the actual culture. And when it comes to engagement, morale, recruiting, and retention, this is, a big factor. So my last recommendation is really take a moment to think about your firm's culture. Ask yourself, how do you want to be known? How will that affect people staying at your firm, being happy at your firm, being motivated, morale being good, people being engaged? And if you think it's lacking, then go about changing it. Okay. So as good as you may be, and I apologize if you're seeing a Google Drive, I apologize, it looks as though my mouse is now officially dead, so we're just going to live with that. Firm members will leave, no matter how excellent you are. Things happen. People may need to relocate to take care of an elderly parent in a different part of the country. All sorts of reasons. My recommendations, if a firm member leaves, get curious. Why did they leave? What was missing for them? Could something have been done to keep them? I'm a big fan of exit interviews, with a caveat. Don't have a supervising attorney be the person who interviews a staff member or an associate who's reporting to them. You're not going to get good data. You're going to get what's for public consumption. Have somebody else, somebody more distant from the interactions, a more objective person. It can be somebody within the firm, outside the firm. Have them do the exit interview. And then if you see common themes among exit interviews, that's a good indication you need to make some changes. Last, we're seeing now boomerangs. We're seeing this in businesses, we're seeing this in law firms. People who left earlier in the pandemic have decided to come back. I'm always a big fan of, if you are leaving a firm, leave on good terms. If a person leaves, hopefully let them leave feeling that the firm's treated them fairly and well. If a person leaves and they want to come back, get curious. Again, why the change? What is attracting them now? Has it been a change with them? Or is there a change in the firm? Just recently, a couple of firms I work with, we saw that people were interested in returning to the firm, more than one associate, because one of the problem partners, I think that's the nicest way to describe it, retired. Nobody wanted to work for that problem partner. People left because of him. With him gone, people much more amenable to rejoining the firm. So what's a managing partner to do? Now, we don't have a black background, it's a white background because you're in the light now. Quick summary: more flexible working hours, work from home options, hybrid work, clear career paths, better technology and tools, manageable workloads, higher, more competitive salaries, rewards, and bonuses, and a culture that promotes a sense of belonging, respect, inclusion, and work-life balance. You probably don't recognize this distinguished-looking gentleman, H.G. Wells. And why is he here? He wasn't a lawyer. I love this quote. Adapt or perish, now as ever, is nature's inexorable imperative. I bring this up for two reasons. One, I'd like to be able to say inexorable and imperative one after another at the end of a presentation. That's not easy. But more importantly, because firms need to adapt. A lot of changes in our world, in the legal landscape in the last couple of years. Changes aren't going to go away. So stuff I've been talking about today are ways you need to adapt. And there'll be future ways you need to adapt as well. You want to create a firm culture where employees don't want to leave. The specific takeaways I gave you are examples of firm culture, aspects of it. And in doing so, it's going to make it much tougher for people to poach your employees, and actually people will start to be attracted to your firm if they aren't already. So here we have Marcia's in my book. Joanne, I'm going to turn it back to you for this, because I believe you have more information on this.
Thank you, Andrew, for such important information that you've been able to share with us today. And most importantly, I would like to comment on that one of the most recent latter slides that you provided with those bullet points. I think that's such a good recap of what you covered today with regard to the Great Resignation. So I would just like to point out, you are all seeing a screen with Andrew's book today. And before we move into our final Q&A, I'd like to share with you that courtesy of the ABA Law Practice Division, we were able to obtain for you a 30% off discount for Andrew's book. So we're very happy about that. That's great. The book is Lawyers as Managers, How to Be a Champion for Your Firm and Employees. And this discount code is actually valid for the webinar attendees today through March 14th. In addition to that, though, I would really like to remind everyone on today's webinar presentation that the State Bar of Michigan offers you an evergreen discount of 15% off ABA publications through its Books for Bars program. So there are so many excellent publications, and we're so happy to be able to provide you with this discount. I will be sending out this information with links to you in a follow-up email tomorrow. So no need to try and copy all of this down. You'll be getting it in a follow-up email. We just want you to be able to take advantage of any and all membership benefits and discounts available to you. So now back to you, Andrew. I think now we should be checking for questions in the queue. Anything?
Okay. Joanne, if you don't have any questions, there are a couple of things that I'd like to go into more detail on, but I'll pause and see if there were any questions in the queue.
Well, I'm gonna cue that back up to you. You have access to the Q&A pod. So back to you, Andrew.
Okie doke. First of all, while I'm answering questions, if you have questions later, please contact me for more information. Okay. You know, earlier I mentioned open-ended questions when it came to hiring, and we have a question about an example of that. Okay, let me think. First of all, go back to what I said. The purpose of the open-ended questions is to get a better feel for the person as a person. You want to expand the conversation. So some examples would be, the phrase I like to use, what would it take? Okay. For example, what would it take for you, the potential hiree, to be most productive at our firm? You're making them think about what they need. If you ask it that way, you're probably going to open the door to more answers than what would you need to be successful here? So things like what would it take can be broader. Also, you can ask questions like, what would you imagine would happen? Use that phrase. As an example, what would you imagine would happen if a client complained to me, your managing partner, that their matter was being mishandled? What you may find is that the person would go immediately on the defensive and say, no, well, I think they're wrong. This is what I did. What you may find is that the person would hopefully say, I'd get curious about why they felt it was mishandled, and I would try and figure out what I could have done differently to do a better job of handling it. So there's that. And I'm sorry, here's more on culture. Let me go back. Whoops. Let me go to the chat. Okay. You know, Joanne, I think we can just go to our thank yous now. And I believe I'll send it back to you.
Wonderful. And thank you, Andrew. That concludes our virtual seminar for today. I'd like to thank Andrew Elowit for a wonderful program. And as always, thanks to all of you for attending. Your feedback is important and will help us ensure we bring the very best seminar experiences to you in the future. If you would complete a brief 8-question survey that will populate your screen when I close this session, it will help guide us with our virtual seminar productions. With that, we hope you enjoyed the seminar and thank you for joining.